Hey everybody, it's Flare31 here. Welcome to a new Let's Play of Pokemon Yellow version. I know, we've already done this. Why are we back here playing Pokemon Yellow again? Well, for the most part, like I was sitting there, I was thinking about it, thinking about the future of my Pokemon Let's Plays, and I was like, you know what, I want it to be more organized than it is right now, because when I started, I just kind of wanted to do it as like a passion project. It was like something I'd always wanted to do, and then I did it, and it was cool, and it is perfectly fine. But now that I'm like getting further and further into it, and I've learned a lot since I started doing that, I've determined what I want to do is actually go through and put more effort into actually, editing these videos and recording them and stuff like that, because I didn't do that before. I didn't want to touch editing, I didn't know how to edit anything, so. If you've seen the original Yellow Let's Play, things are going to be somewhat different, but also not at the same time. I intend to implement rules for how I want to go about playing through each of these games, and specifically regarding team building, I want to have the following rules. Rule number 1, teams must have all HM moves on them. This one is pretty self-explanatory, but whenever you play a Pokemon game, specifically earlier generations of Pokemon, there are HMs that are moves that you have to put onto your Pokemon to be able to progress in the game. Not all of them are necessary for progression, but they're still HMs nonetheless. And the way I want to handle it is, instead of doing the route where you make an HM slave, which is just Pokemon that you dump all the HM moves onto that isn't actually a part of your primary team, doesn't battle. Instead of doing that, I like having the moves dispersed between my actual team members. While it limits the movesets of my actual team members, it also makes it more challenging for me to team build, which is always a good thing. And then also it'll be more cohesive for the experience of playing through it with me, of being able to be like, oh yeah, we don't have to run back to the PC to grab our HM slave. We can just use the HMs that we need to. So, rule number 2: team members must not be version exclusives. This one is also pretty self-explanatory. This is something I didn't actually do in Pokemon Crystal when I Let's Played that, and so now I'm going to rectify it. If there is a version exclusive Pokemon, like Phanpy or Teddiursa, that you cannot get in every version of the game, then I just won't allow myself to use it on my team. Again, this will make team building harder for me, and that's always a good thing. But it'll also allow everyone watching, regardless of what version they're playing, to be able to have the opportunity to play along using my exact team if they so wish, which is the primary motivator there. I'm also adding a sub-clause to this particular rule. Team members must be obtainable in the same general area in all versions. This is to prevent me from being able to be like, well, in Pokemon Platinum, I can use this Gibble here, but you can't use it if you're playing Diamond Pearl until X amount of time later in the game, which is a real thing, by the way. Pokemon tends to make it so that when you play a third version, they just give you access to powerful Pokemon earlier, and so I'm going to limit myself from being able to use those, essentially. And then rule number 3, team members cannot be the same species as a past team member. This one is also pretty self-explanatory and relatively important. As we go through our Pokemon journey and play through all the different games that I want to play through, I'm gonna make it so that I cannot go back and use the same species as a team member I've used in the past. And for clarification, a Pokemon species is actually just the name of the Pokemon. So the species of a Pikachu is Pikachu. And It's a distinct species from Raichu, even though they're in the same evolutionary line. They're two distinct species, right? So if I use a Pikachu on my team, I can still use a Raichu on my team later. I just can't use another Pikachu. And that will wrap up the rules for my team building limitations I've placed on myself. I'll reserve the right to modify the rules as we go if I need to, like adding on rules that suddenly need to be added because there have been mechanical changes to the game that happened in later generations, which may or may not happen. I haven't really thought about it that far ahead. Also, of course, rule number 1 will eventually become obsolete. So now for this game, it actually means that my team isn't going to change at all from my original Let's Play. So that's not going to change, but there's going to be some tweaks here and there to how I present the game that are probably going to be worth watching. And of course, also on top of that, I'm playing on a Super Game Boy 2 and not a Game Boy Color like my original Let's Play was on. It's kind of an interesting dilemma with what is the best way to play Generation 1 specifically. It kind of boils down to the original Red and Blue are presented best on a Super Game Boy 2. If you do not know the difference between a Super Game Boy 1 and a Super Game Boy 2, the primary difference for a lot of people is going to be the fact that the Super Game Boy 1 is the only one that's released in North America. The Super Game Boy 2 was limited to only Japan. This is unfortunate though, because the first Super Game Boy has some issues with it that make it not the most ideal piece of hardware in the world. Namely, it's not the same clock speed as an actual Game Boy, and so it runs games just a little bit faster than it should. And as such, they also didn't include a link cable port on it, so you can't do anything with it besides play games at a slightly faster speed that can mess with things. And it's not the most like optimal experience ever, but you know, it's passable. Super Game Boy 2 comes in, it makes the clock speed actually work, and then it adds a link cable port on the side so you can actually trade with it and stuff. So that's all nice and good. If you are thinking about getting a Super Game Boy 2, you can actually get one and it will be region free, so you don't have to worry about you getting like a Super Famicom, the Japanese version of the SNES specifically, to use it. You can just use it on your regular SNES, your North American SNES, but it doesn't fit in the cartridge slot quite right, so you have to snap off some tabs and stuff, but there are guides online that tell you how to do that. So just be aware it is an option, and they're not incredibly expensive, but it's kind of a niche piece of hardware to get just to play Generation 1 specifically on it. But I wanted to make sure that you knew the difference and why we're playing on Super Game Boy 2 specifically. But the main point here is that Red and Blue look the best on Super Game Boy 2, even compared to like a GBA or a Game Boy Color or anything like that. And therefore, because Pokemon Yellow does not look much different on a Super Game Boy compared to a Game Boy Color, this is actually a fun fact here. Pokemon Yellow is commonly mistaken to be a Game Boy Color game, even though it's actually just a Game Boy game. However, it's kind of weird the way they handled it, because the ROM header is for a Game Boy Color game, and so a Game Boy Color won't let you treat it like a Game Boy game. But everything else about it is just a Game Boy game. It's not special in any way. It doesn't have any sort of like special coloring that takes advantage of the Game Boy Color's hardware. If it didn't have that little bit of a header in the ROM, it would not be a Game Boy Color game, is my point. And so all they really did was take the Super Game Boy Color palette, and then they slapped it onto the Game Boy Color detection, and they called it a day. But it's a little bit different, the color palette is, so it's a little bit more saturated looking on a Game Boy Color. If you would prefer to see it like that, you could watch the original Let's Play, because I did play it on Game Boy Color there. Of course, it's not going to have all the bells and whistles of this Let's Play. But for visual consistency with red and blue, I'm going to be playing on Super Game Boy because we're going to be playing red and blue on Super Game Boy. And one of the bigger changes I want to make with this Let's Play is I want to also record red and blue as companion pieces to show my process of catching the version exclusive Pokemon that I want to use for completing the Pokedex in this game. With all that out of the way, let's go ahead and start up the game. Now, we're going to go to the options menu first and foremost. We want to start text speed to fast. We'll leave animations on. Animations are referring to when you're battling something. Whenever you use an attack, it'll show an animation of what the attack is. And you can turn it off, which will speed up battles, but we're going to leave them on because we don't really care about speed. We're showcasing, right? Battle style. Battle style is actually really fundamental to how the game is played. It's defaulted to shift, and that's how most people play the game. What that means is that whenever you're battling, at the end of your turn, it'll prompt you and go, do you want to switch out? Before the opponent sends in their Pokemon, they'll be like, they're about to send in this Pokemon, do you want to switch out? And then you can switch in whatever Pokemon you want before they send in their Pokemon. If instead you set it to set, it doesn't let you do that. They'll just send out a Pokemon, and then you have to either use up your turn to switch out, or you have to deal with it. So I'm going to play it on set for all of the games going forward, because it feels more fair, and also it's slightly more challenging. And then we have the sound options. Red and blue are forced to be mono. There is no sound option. But yellow introduced stereo, which is what earphone 1 is, just stereo. There's also earphone 2, which focuses the sound to the left, the left side of your stereo system. And then earphone 3 focuses the audio towards the right side of your stereo system. I'm gonna go with earphone 1, even though I kind of like how mono sounds better in Generation 1. Because we're already going to be getting mono through red and blue, and this is just kind of like another way to show how different the game is. And then there's print. Print is actually for the Game Boy printer, if you want to print out like your diploma or the different Pokedex screens or whatever. This will be how dark you want the print to be. I'm going to leave it on normal. And there we go, options are all set. Let's go ahead and start the game. Hello there, welcome to the world of Pokemon. My name is Oak. People call me the Pokemon Prof. This world is inhabited by creatures called Pokemon. For some people, Pokemon are pets, others use them for fights. Myself, I study Pokemon as a profession. First, what is your name? So, around these parts, if you're new here, we use the canon name for whatever nameable characters we have. And the canon name, even in Pokemon Yellow, is Red. If you are playing Pokemon Red or Blue and you still want to play along, you can, for sure. It's just not going to be as tailored to you as it is for Pokemon Yellow. So keep that in mind. The canon name for your character is still going to be Red if you're playing those games. Right, so your name is Red. This is my grandson. He's been your rival since you were a baby. What is his name again? So the canon name for our rival here is not Gary, but it's actually Blue, regardless of what version you're playing. That's right, I remember now. His name is Blue. Red. Your very own Pokemon legend is about to unfold. A world of dreams and adventures with Pokemon awaits. Let's go. And here we are in the world of Pokemon. So, first off, you have a PC in the corner, a really old and school PC compared to when this is being recorded. And you start off with this item system in your PC, and you start off with 1 potion in it. Might as well withdraw it. Something else cool is you get Red is playing the SNES. Okay, it's time to go. Yeah, funny story, we're playing this on a SNES, right? Anyway, let's go ahead and go downstairs. Right, all boys leave home someday. It said so on TV. Professor Oak next door is looking for you. Is this our TV? You sit on the ground. There's a movie on TV. 4 boys are walking on railroad tracks. Everybody go too. Cram full of Pokemon books. And this is our lovely town. I'm raising Pokemon too. When they get strong, they can protect me. I am not raising Pokemon right now, currently. Excuse you? So this is our house, not even our mom's house, our house. Pallet Town. Shades of your journey await. Blue's house. So this is our rival's house, huh? Hi. Hi, Red. Blue's out at Grandpa's lab. What are you looking at there? It's a big map. This is useful. That's a window, I'm guessing. A town map. Ooh, we can look at the town map. So we're down here in Pallet Town. We got a whole big region ahead of us that we can actually spoil ourselves on the names on, but we're gonna ignore it for right now. I guess I'll come down here. We have water down here that's blocking our path, along with a bunch of barrels and stuff. Technology is incredible. You can now store and recall items and Pokemon as data via PC. The logistics of that are super weird. Oh, Pokemon Research Lab. So evidently our rival's chilling around here. Hi. I study Pokemon as Professor Oak's aide. Sure you do. Professor Oak is the authority on Pokemon. Many Pokemon trainers hold him in high regard. I study Pokemon as Professor Oak's aide. Are you guys twins or something? Oh, hi. Yo, Red. Gramps isn't around. I ran here because he said he had a Pokemon for me. Is it this one? That's a Pokeball. There's a Pokemon inside. And I can't have it, huh? Nothing in the trash. The save option is on the menu screen. Push start to open the menu. Well, since they mentioned it, let's go ahead and open the menu. So, here in the menu, we got the option of our Pokemon, which you can't access yet because we don't have any Pokemon. We have our items, which shows us our items that we have. We have our name, which is actually our trainer card. It shows us how much money we have, how much time we played the game for, and our badges. And then we got save, and then you can tweak the options if you want to. It's encyclopedia-like, but the pages are blank. There's an email message here. Calling all Pokemon trainers. The elite trainers of Pokemon League are ready to take on all comers. Bring your best Pokemon and see how you rate as a trainer. Pokemon League HQ, Indigo Plateau. P.S. Professor Oak, please visit us. They're like, please, Professor. You're so renowned. Alright, well, we can't do anything here because no one important is around, evidently, so I guess let's try to leave. Hey, wait, don't go out. Where'd you come from? That was close. Wild Pokemon live in tall grass. Wild Pikachu appeared. Damn, I wish I could catch a Pikachu that easily. 1 ball at full health? Phew. A Pokemon can appear anytime in tall grass. You need your own Pokemon for your protection. You didn't have one. I know. Here, come with me. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. Maybe you just were so confident because you knew it would catch that you didn't have to bring out your Pokemon. Gramps, I'm fed up with waiting. Blue. Why are you here already? I said for you to come by later. Ah, whatever. Just wait there. Look, Red, do you see that ball on the table? It's called a Pokeball. It holds a Pokemon inside. You may have it. Go on, take it. Hey, Gramps, what about me? Be patient, Blue. I'll give you one later. Thanks, Professor. Go ahead, it's yours. Hey, I'm getting a Pokemon. I'll get a better Pokemon than you. So this is my Pokemon. I can't wait to see what it is. No way! Red, I want this Pokemon. Blue snatched the Pokemon. Blue, what are you doing? Gramps, I want this one. But I... Oh, alright then. The Pokemon is yours. I was going to give you one anyway. Red, come over here. Red, this is the Pokemon I caught earlier. You can have it. I caught it in the wild, and it's not tame yet. You want to give a nickname to Pikachu? Of course we do. In the similar vein of our original Let's Play, we're going to be nicknaming this Pikachu Chubby Chew, because Generation 1 Pikachu is very famous for being very chubby compared to modern Pikachu. And that's it, we just get our Pokemon. So let's go ahead and take a look at our Pikachu here. Oh, look how cute he is. Surprise! I have taken the liberty of compiling all the important information that I think you need to know about whatever Pokemon we're going to be talking about. I plan to do this for every single Pokemon that we catch, as a sort of way to challenge myself to think about the Pokemon that we're talking about, but also to give you information on it in case you might want to use it on your team. Let me go over the layout that I'm using here, just so we're all on the same page. Starting at the top. No, not that. Everyone knows what that is. Yes, that. This is how I'm conveying which versions you can catch this Pokemon in. If you see the cartridge for whatever version you're playing there, that means you can get the Pokemon in that game. Pretty straightforward. If the cartridge is not there, then of course you cannot get it. I do want to specify that this is not location specific. So for example, this Pikachu is a starter Pokemon in Pokemon Yellow and is not a starter Pokemon in Red and Blue. However, you still see all 3 cartridges there. That's because you can still get a Pikachu in Red and Blue, just not right here. Good? Good. Next we have typing. A Pokemon's type is essentially half of its identity. Every type has its offensive properties, and every type has its defensive properties. I'll use the electric type as an example here to explain. So, the electric type, its offensive properties are that it hits these types super effectively, meaning it does 2 times damage to them. However, these other types here resist electric, meaning whenever you attack them, you'll do half damage to them. Everything not listed here is neutral to electric, with the exception of this type here, ground, which is actually immune to the electric type, meaning you'll do 0 times damage to them. Defensively, electric resists these types here, meaning it'll take half damage from them. Is weak to these types here, meaning you'll take 2 times damage from them. And every other one hits them neutrally. Electric type doesn't have any immunities, meaning it can't take 0 times damage from any other type. literally every single type in the game, all 15 of them, have this interaction, both offensively and defensively, with other types in the game. And every single Pokemon has a type associated with it. So it's very important to know. And it's also the only piece of information you'll see here that the game actually like explains to you in any form or way. Pretty much everything else the game is like hush hush about, does not clue you in on it. Next we have the catch rate of a Pokemon. Essentially, the higher the number you see, the easier it is to catch that Pokemon, and the lower number you see, the harder it is to catch that Pokemon. A catch rate is a number between 0 and 255. No decimals allowed. It's not as straightforward as like a percentage chance out of 255, because there's a lot of other factors into what your actual percentage chance of catching a Pokemon is, like the Pokeball, what level they are, how much health they have, do they have status, etc., etc. But it'll give you a rough idea of how hard or how easy it is going to be to catch. And then we have growth rate. Growth rate's kind of weird. The general overview of it is that the growth rate will determine how much experience you need to get to the next level for each individual level. And even more granular than that, it'll determine how fast or how slow it'll take for you to get to level 100, which is the max level a Pokemon can get to. There are 4 different growth rates: fast, medium slow, and slow. And you can pretty much take them at face value. A Pokemon with a fast growth rate is going to reach level 100 before a Pokemon with a medium fast growth rate, and they'll do it before one with a medium slow growth rate, and they'll do it before one with a slow growth rate. It's pretty straightforward. There is a lot of kinks with medium fast and medium slow specifically, because in the middle of a Pokemon's lifetime, so between like levels like 20 to like 60, medium fast and medium slow actually kind of swap in that it takes longer for each level with medium fast than it does with medium slow for some reason. And of course, in game, you're usually going to cap out around level 60, so medium fast is kind of actually worse than medium slow in terms of speed in which you're going to level up. But they're also really close together, and so you can almost think of them as the same thing, and they're just both medium. So don't think about it too hard. I just want to include it here because I think having an idea of how easy a Pokemon is to raise is always a good thing. And then we have base experience yield. This isn't actually knowledge that you'll need to know for using the Pokemon in your team, because base experience yield is, if you're defeating this Pokemon in a battle, how much experience are they going to give you? It's not a direct correlation. You're not going to get exactly 82 experience for killing a Pikachu, but it is directly proportional. So the lower the number, the less experience you're going to get. The higher the number, the more experience you're going to get. Level is ultimately going to be more important than base experience yield, pretty much. There's tolerances and stuff, but the reason I'm including it here is because if you're wanting to ever grind levels for some reason or another, you can look here and see, oh, which Pokemon has the highest base experience yield that I might want to look into using as a grinding tool. Again, though, level does matter pretty much more than base experience yield, so you're going to want to find the highest level Pokemon that you can. And then within like a level range of about like 5 levels or so from that Pokemon, then you'll want to look at, out of all the options at this level range, which one has the highest base experience yield. And then we have evolution data. Everyone knows Pokemon evolve. Some of them don't, but most of them do. It's pretty self-explanatory. The arrow in the middle is the evolution requirement, with the requirement being right above it. And then we have the recommended moveset. This is the fun part for me, because it gives me a chance to give my opinion on what I think the best way to craft the Pokemon is, the best way to use the Pokemon. Essentially, a Pokemon can learn only 4 moves. If you try to learn more than 4 moves, it'll make you forget one of the moves you already know to replace it with the new move. And so for every Pokemon, I want to give a moveset that I think would work best on it. This is going to not take into account a team. I'm essentially looking at in a vacuum going, if I were to use this Pokemon in-game with 5 other random Pokemon, it's going to be part of a team. It's just the team itself is not being taken into account. What moves would I give this Pokemon? What role do I think this Pokemon works best in? I want to make clear that movesets are going to be tailored to the game that I'm playing, because usually 3rd versions have different movesets than the other versions. So actually Pokemon Yellow does have slightly different movesets per Pokemon than Red and Blue does. It's not going to make a huge difference, but something worth knowing. I'm also not going to be specifically accounting for HMs when I'm making these movesets. And then we have, by far, the most important part, the base stats. Base stats are essentially the other half of the Pokemon's identity, along with the typing. I would argue that they're the most important part of a Pokemon, period. The graph on top is the actual base stats themselves. There are 5 of them in Generation 1, and all of them are a number between 0 and 255. From top to bottom, we have HP, which is just how much health your Pokemon has, pretty self-explanatory. Then we have attack. Pokemon uses its stats in an interesting way because the attack stat is used specifically for physical attacks. In Generation 1, physical attacks are actually connected to typing. So any of these types here, having a move of that typing will actually use the attack stat no matter what. Doesn't matter what move it is, doesn't matter if it makes contact or not, it will always use the physical attacking attack stat, which is attack. And then conversely, whenever you attack someone with a physical attacking move, they'll be using their defense stat to defend. Next we have the special stat. Special stat is a weird stat because it handles the special moves. The special moves are all the types that we didn't already mention with the physical typings. There are these typings here. The easiest way to remember them, if you've played modern generation Pokemon and you know the evolutions, is to think all the evolutions plus dragon is your special typings. Now, unlike attack and defense, special is just one stat. The attacking Pokemon uses its special stat to attack with a special move, and the defending Pokemon uses its special stat to defend from a special move. Which makes special the most important stat bar none of any Pokemon in the game, because if you have a high special stat, you can dish out a lot of special damage, but you can also tank a lot of special damage at the same time. It's super busted. And then we have speed. Speed is just a contest of who has the bigger number. Whatever Pokemon has the higher number in their speed stat will go first on a given turn. If, for whatever reason, 2 Pokemon have the exact same speed stat, resulting in a speed tie, the game will just 50-50 on who gets to go first for that turn. So you can actually have it to where one turn you're going first, and the next turn your opponent's going first, and it's just always going to be random. And then this lower graph is actually the total, which is obviously just all the base stats added together into what is the total of all of them. The graph itself goes from 0 to 1,275, because a theoretically perfect Pokemon with all stats of 255 will have a base stat total of 1,275. Something I want to make clear about these graphs is they're kind of misleading. You might be looking at them and you're like, okay, well, the median or the average might be in the middle of the graph, and so anything with stats worse than the middle is probably pretty bad. This is not the case because most Pokemon don't get stats above 100 very often, and especially almost never above 150. And so actually you're looking at more like 60 to 90 as your like middle of the road stat. This means that a base stat total of about 300 to 450 is going to be your middle of the road average base stat total, which might seem low compared to how high the graph actually scales, but that's just how Pokemon is. Most Pokemon never get to see anything close to the halfway point of the graph, and that's just how the game is balanced. But I think it's cool to see just how little of the stats totals we're actually using in Pokemon. So I've left them the way they are. The coloring of the stats will give you a good idea of how good or bad a stat actually is. Green is obviously good, and red is obviously bad, and there's a gradient of colors between them. If a Pokemon has a really, really exceptional stat, which very few Pokemon do, then you'll see a blue color to represent that. And if a Pokemon somehow has a perfect stat of 255, you'll see a gold color. The base stat total follows suit with the gradient in blue and gold. Now that I am done explaining things you probably already knew about, I want to quickly go over the starters, because if you're playing red or blue, you're not going to have access to Pikachu as a starter, obviously. Pikachu's only in Pokemon Yellow as a starter. However, if you were intending to play along with my team, but you're playing red or blue, do not worry. You can actually get a Pikachu really quickly in the Viridian Forest. We'll end up going there towards the end of the episode, and there's 0 trainer battles between now and then, except for the first required fight, but it's not a huge deal. You'll essentially have the same experience if you go and catch a Pikachu there, because there's no special properties to the partner Pikachu other than it can't evolve. However, if you are playing red or blue and you're wanting to use one of the traditional Kanto starters that they give you, I'm just going to give you a kind of overview of the different options and the ups and downs so you can make a better informed decision, but I'm not going to lay out the red carpet and do the whole information thing until we encounter them in this game. So, people like to ascribe the 3 different starters as 3 different difficulty settings that you'd find in a more traditional game. So, starting with easy, Bulbasaur, the grass type starter. Bulbasaur is really strong against most of the gyms in the region, and just overall really holds his weight very well, has a really good stat spread, and as such ends up being really easy to use. And then we have the medium difficulty option, Squirtle, the water type starter. Squirtle is a really bulky Pokemon. Unlike Bulbasaur, Squirtle is good against the first gym, then neutral against the second gym, and then has a run of bad luck in the middle game with the third and fourth ones, and then goes back to neutral until the end game where he's strong against the last 2 gyms. It's an interesting kind of balancing situation there. And finally, we have the hard difficulty choice, Charmander, the fire starter. Charmander gets a really rough draw against the early game gyms, being weak to the first 2. And then it doesn't really get much better, just in general, because of the final evolutions typing just not being the greatest, at least defensively. However, Charmander does end up becoming a pretty good sweeper, and so if you're willing to put up with how tough it can be to raise it, it actually ends up paying off pretty well. Something about Charmander, though, that I do want to mention is its final evolution does not end up learning Fly in Red-Blue, but does in Yellow. So if that's one of the things that you're considering about using a Charmander in Red or Blue, then just know that you can't actually put Fly on him. Anyway, let's get to talking about Pikachu. Pikachu is a very mediocre Pokemon. Actually, it's probably a pretty bad Pokemon. It doesn't even hit the range I talked about earlier for its base stat total to be mediocre. Most of its stats are below average. The only relatively good stat it has is speed, but it's not anything crazy to write home about. This means that you're going to have a Pokemon that is going to be pretty fast and probably outspeed most things. However, it's not going to have the attacking stats to be able to make use of its speed, nor does it have the defense stats to tank anything. So you're kind of left with a Pokemon that I guess you can paralyze things with, and maybe get the occasional KO on like a Pokemon that is of a type that you're strong against, and like, that's it. I wish I had better things to say about it because this is our starter Pokemon, but unfortunately that's about the best I can do. There are other electric types in the game that do Pikachu's job way better than it. Not that Pikachu really has a defined job. Now, you might have noticed that there is a asterisk next to the catch rate number. And that's because Pikachu is normally a 190 catch rate Pokemon. However, the partner Pikachu, our starter Pikachu, has a special catch rate assigned to it of 163. It's not anything you have to specifically worry about in this game. It'll become a mechanic that we'll want to retread at a later point in time. Thankfully, Pikachu does not have to stay a Pikachu because you can evolve it with a Thunderstone into the powerful Raichu. Look at these stats, so much better than Pikachu's, even though they're not particularly amazing. Unfortunately, even though the stats kind of look good, there's a lot of green there. Its base stat total is still within the mediocre range I mentioned earlier, on the higher end of it, but still within it. And the extra 10 points of speed are nice and actually mean quite a bit, but ultimately they're not gonna do a whole lot for you. Having 90 attack and 90 special is pretty solid, actually. You could use Raichu as a mixed attacker, meaning you could use physical attacks on it just fine, you could use special attacks on it just fine. However, mixed attackers aren't particularly good in single-player in-game. They are convenient, but not particularly good. It's kind of the jack-of-all-trades versus master of situation. Generally speaking, you want a master of, and even more specifically, you want a sweeper. Sweepers are super coveted because they're just the simply best way to handle a in-game team. If you are always moving first and you're always knocking out whatever comes out, you're just gonna win every time, and it's gonna be fast on top of that. So generally speaking, when we want in-game team members, we want sweepers. And Raichu is not a sweeper. It is a decent mixed attacker. And unfortunately, a lot of Generation 1 Pokemon do not have exactly the best move pools. Move pools being the moves that the Pokemon can learn, whether it be through level up or through other things like TMs or HMs, which are one-time consumable items in the case of TMs, and infinite use in the case of HMs. The only HM move that Raichu learns is Flash, and honestly, it's a decent candidate of dumping Flash onto if that is something that you want to do. Because, as I mentioned, its move pool is rather limited. Raichu is only really going to learn attacking electric moves, some status moves, notably Thunder Wave being particularly good, and everything else is a physical attacking normal move with a couple of physical attacking fighting moves tossed in that aren't anything great. One last thing I do want to note about Raichu's move pool. You actually can solve all of Raichu's coverage problems with one move. When I say coverage, what I actually mean though is the ability to hit every single type of Pokemon reliably and or effectively. And right now, Raichu's move pool really doesn't let it hit rock types because a lot of rock types are also part ground type. And of course, ground is immune to electric type moves, and rock resists the normal type moves that it otherwise gets. The fighting type moves that Raichu does get are like okay. They're not the best way to handle it, but they're okay. Unfortunately, rock types usually have high defense, so the fighting type physical moves, being physical moves, mean they're not exactly the best way to handle it. That's where the move Surf comes in. You can actually teach a Pikachu Surf if you have a copy of Pokemon Stadium laying around and fill out the prerequisites for that. And then, of course, you can take your Pikachu and evolve it into a Raichu with the move Surf already learned. And then you can have a Raichu with Surf. And Surf is a Water-type move that completely eliminates Raichu's coverage problem because it'll hit Ground and Rock-type super effectively. With Surf, Raichu is actually a pretty damn good Pokemon. One that I can pretty highly recommend, actually. For the purposes of my Let's Play, though, we're not going to be able to put Surf onto a Pikachu, at least during the main game, so I do not have this option available to me. But if you have the option available to you, then you should totally do it, because it's very worth your time. Unfortunately for us, though, we cannot use Raichu, and this is because the partner Pikachu that you get in Pokemon Yellow will refuse to evolve with the Thunderstone. I want to make it clear that this is only the partner Pikachu that you have, which is why there's an asterisk on that Y for Pokemon Yellow there in the evolution data. If you traded over a different Pikachu from Red and Blue into Pokemon Yellow, you could evolve that just fine. It is very specifically only the partner Pikachu. However, this isn't because of the partner Pikachu, it's specifically because of the partner Pikachu in Pokemon Yellow. If you trade the partner Pikachu to Red and Blue, you can evolve it there just fine as well, and then you can trade it back. Now, you might be noticing that the recommended moveset is looking very empty. This is because this is actually a Pokemon that I plan to use on my team, and I don't want to spoil the moveset that I've curated for this Pokemon with the recommended moves. You'll essentially see my recommended moveset as the game progresses. And since we're on the topic of team members, I'm actually going to bring back up the rule set that I talked about in the preamble for team members and how I'm team building. I am adding a couple of rules here because now they're relevant. Rule number 4, I must use my starter on my team. Honestly, if I were you, I would just dump Pikachu in the box and forget about it and use anything else, because Pikachu is super bad. But because of rule number 4, I'm going to be beholden to using this Pikachu. And this also will tie into rule number 5, team members must not require trading. You know, I could just trade this Pikachu, evolve it, trade it back, and then I'll be a happy camper with the Raichu, because at least Raichu is, like, fairly decent. But because I'm not allowing trading on my team, I'm not going to be allowed to do that, which means I am indeed stuck with this Pikachu for the entire game. So our Pikachu here starts with Thundershock and Growl at level 5. Not exactly great, but also, I mean, we do get a stab move for our starter Pokemon, which is better than we could say for any other starter Pokemon in this generation. And yeah, let's just go ahead and leave. Wait, Red. Let's check out our Pokemon. Come on, I'll take you on. Blue wants to fight. Oh, you got an Eevee. You stole that Eevee from me. Alright, I would do... Actually, we'll do one Growl. Growl lowers the attack of our Eevee here, and they lower our defense, so it kind of cancels out, but I figured I'd show using a status move. We got a critical hit and paralyzed it at the same time. This Eevee is not very lucky. Paralysis is a status condition, one of a few. It lowers a Pokemon speed by 75%, and also prevent the opponent from moving We're gonna end this real quick. You can't stand stab Thundershock. Oh, and we learned Tail Whip. That's so useful. What? Unbelievable. I picked the wrong Pokemon. I don't know what choice you think you had. I guess you could have waited to see what Professor Oak would have given you. Maybe he would have given you the Pikachu and this would be a different story. Okay, I'll make my Pokemon fight to toughen it up. Red, Gramps, smell you later. Damn, you booked it off. What? Oh, would you look at that? It's odd, but it appears that your Pikachu dislikes Pokeballs. You should just keep it with you. That should make it happy. You can talk to it and see how it feels about you. Pikachu does not look very pleased. Yeah, so Heart Gold, Soul Silver, eat your heart out. We had partner Pokemon that can walk on the field before you did. Yeah, this is where the idea came from. However, in this game, it is limited to only Pikachu, and specifically a Pikachu that you own that shares all of the relevant information with you. So, like, if you trade over a Pikachu from a different game, it's not going to follow you, unless you happen to get super lucky and the trainer IDs and trainer name is an exact match in that other game to yours here, and then the game won't be able to tell that's not yours. But regardless, it's meant to be limited to just your partner Pikachu here. I kind of doubt that you say anything else. You should talk to it and see how it feels. Yeah, okay. Well, Pikachu is not pleased with me, but we will deal with it. And now we have our Pokemon, let's go ahead and head out into the world and immediately get swarmed by a Rattata. We're gonna ignore battles for the time being. Go ahead and run away. Head up this way, and... Hi, I work at a Pokemon Mart. It's a convenient shop, so please visit us in Viridian City. I know, I'll give you a sample. Here you go. Gave us a potion. Pretty cool. We have some ledges here. They don't really look like ledges, but they're supposed to be ledges, so the part on the top is higher than the part on the bottom, so that's why you can't walk up them, but you can jump down them. This guy might actually explain that. See those ledges along the road? It's a bit scary, but you can jump from them. You can get back to Pallet Town quicker that way. Alright, made it through the grass. Let's go ahead and enter trainer tips. The battle moves of Pokemon are limited by their power points, PP. To replenish PP, rest your tired Pokemon at a Pokemon Center. Wow. Anyway, this is Viridian City. It may not look like it right now, but it is. There's nothing down here. I don't know why I'm walking around like a ding-dong. Anyway, we have a Heal Your Pokemon Center here. Let's go ahead and go inside. So we have Nurse Joy, canonically in Pokemon Yellow. Not just like a regular unnamed nurse in Red and Blue. Welcome to our Pokemon Center. We heal your Pokemon back to perfect health. Shall we heal your Pokemon? No. We hope to see you again. And of course we have the Chansey here. There's a Pokemon Center in every town ahead. They don't charge any money either. Free healthcare. Pokemon Centers heal your tired, hurt, or fainted Pokemon. Yeah, so this Chansey up there is an anime thing. Pokemon Yellow very heavily is inspired by the anime and tries to make a lot of changes that align closer with it. You can use that PC in the corner. The receptionist told me. So kind. Welcome to the Cable Club. We're making preparations. Please wait. Guess we'll have to come back to that. So yeah, here's our PC again. However, instead of just our PC, which we had back in our home that we looked at, we can use that to access our item system once again. But there's also someone's PC. Accessed someone's PC. Accessed Pokemon storage system. Yeah, so as that guy was mentioning in Pallet Town, you can just store Pokemon in the PC. And unfortunately, you do need to have one Pokemon on you at all times, so you can't just deposit a Pikachu and get rid of it. However, I do want to mention while we're here that you can print out your box, which is just like the list of Pokemon that are in your box. It's not particularly cool, but you also, of course, need the Game Boy printer to do that. Alright, let's go ahead and exit this place. Hey, dude. Those Pokeballs at your waist. You have Pokemon. It's great that you can carry and use Pokemon anytime, anywhere. I have one Pokemon. Everyone's acting like I have like a full team. So this up here is actually a dead end, but if you click on the tree, the little tiny tree right here, you can find a potion. Wait, hold on. You like that Pikachu? No? Man, you're hard to please. Radiant City, the eternally green paradise. Eternally green. Let's go try walking up here. I don't want to know what this murder scene is. I'm just gonna go past it. You can't go through here. This is private property. Bullshit, this is a road. Oh, Grandpa, don't be so mean. He hasn't had his coffee yet. He's not dead. What a jerk. My daddy loves Pokemon too. Speary. Coming up with nicknames is fun, but hard. Simple names are the easiest to remember. I guess. And what are you naming your Pokemon that it becomes like cumbersome to remember the name of it? Spearow, named Speary. Is this like your certificate of ownership of the Pokemon? Because I don't have one of those, as far as I know of. Can't get up there because someone is blocking the road. Go in here though. Phew, I'm trying to memorize all my notes. Notes? Oh no, I didn't want to leave. Sis says Pokemon will become tame if you treat them nicely. Looked at the notebook. First page. Pokeballs are used to catch Pokemon. Up to 6 Pokemon can be carried. People who raise and make Pokemon fight are called Pokemon trainers. Second page. Healthy Pokemon may be hard to catch, so weaken at first. Poison, burns, and other damage are effective. Third page. Pokemon trainers seek others to engage in Pokemon fights. Battles are constantly fought at Pokemon gyms. How many pages do you have? Fourth page. The goal for Pokemon trainers is to beat the top 8 Pokemon gym leaders. Do so to earn the right to face the Elite Four of Pokemon League. Hey, don't look at my notes. Excuse me. Okay. Be sure to read the blackboard carefully. Before whiteboards, we had blackboards. The blackboard describes Pokemon status changes during battles. Nope. I can explain those. Eventually. Alright. I think we're running out of buildings. You want to know about the 2 kinds of caterpillar Pokemon? Sure. Caterpie has no poison, but Weedle does. Watch out for its poison sting. No, I don't want to know. Oh, okay then. I'm so offended. Hey, you came from Palatown? You know Professor Oak, right? His order came in. Will you take it to him? Got Oak's parcel. What is this parcel thing that you've given me? Use. This isn't yours to use. Toss. That's too important to toss. That'd be kind of funny if you just soft lock yourself. Because you actually do need that. It's very important. The shop sells a lot of paralyze heals. Shop finally has some potions in stock. Really? Okay, say hi to Professor Oak for me. I want to buy stuff. Alright, fine. I guess I'll do your errands for you. Everyone just outsourcing the delivery to DoorDash instead of bucking up and hiring people. Alright, let's use our newfound ledge trick to get back to Palatown without entering the grass. Of course, they do make us go through the grass right here, but it's fine. Alright, off we go. I'm back with a delivery this time. Are you gonna tip? Oh, Red. How's my old Pokemon? Well, it seems to like you a lot. You must be talented as a Pokemon trainer. What? You have something for me? Ah, this is the custom Pokeball I ordered. Thanks, Red. By the way, I must ask you to do something for me. Gramps. Gramps, my Pokemon has grown stronger. Check it out. Ah, Blue, good timing. I need to ask both of you to do something for me. On my desk there is my invention. Pokedex. It automatically records data on Pokemon you've seen or caught. It's a high-tech encyclopedia. Red and Blue, take these with you. I make a complete guide on all the Pokemon in the world. That was my dream. But I'm too old. I can't do it. So I want you two to fulfill my dream for me. Get moving, you two. This is a great undertaking in Pokemon history. Alright, Gramps, leave it all to me. Red, I hate to say it, but I don't need you. I know, I'll borrow a town map from my sis. I'll tell her not to lend you one, Red. What a jerk. Are you gonna tell him off or what? Pokemon around the world, wait for you, Red. You're like the worst kind of grandpa. Grandpa that's like, I don't want to get involved with that. Not my kids. Alright, well, I'm gonna get a town map too. You're gonna give me one, right? Grandpa asked you to run an errand? Here, this will help you. Yes. Take that, Blue. So yes, you can get a town map from Blue's sister here. And now we can look at the town map whenever we want in case we get lost. But the region's fairly straightforward to navigate. If you ever do want to know what the place you're in is called, though, you can look at the map, which is actually pretty helpful. You know what? Let's go talk to our mom before we leave. Red, if you drive your Pokemon too hard, they'll dislike you. You should take a rest. Oh, good. You and your Pokemon are looking great. Take care now. Okay. So yeah, your mom can actually heal your Pokemon for you if you are too lazy to go to the Pokemon Center in Viridian City, or if it's like too far away and this is closer. Now that we have our Pokedex, though, I do want to take a look here at our Pokemon that we've seen, because that's what this is. Specifically, let's look at this Rattata. Data? We know it's the rat Pokemon, we know its name, we know its number. Don't know its height or weight or anything else about it. You can listen to its cry. You can actually see what area you can find it in, which is signified by these black flashing Pokemon markers. And then you can print out the Pokemon data if you wanted to on a Game Boy printer. Our Pokemon, though, that we've actually caught, which is signified by that little Pokeball icon next to it, that we own, as the Pokedex puts it, it's right here. Pikachu, the mouse Pokemon. It keeps its tail raised to monitor its surroundings. If you yank its tail, it will try to bite you. I believe it. How many Pokemon are in this thing anyway? Oh my god, it just keeps going. Oh yeah, you can go down pages at a time with the right D-pad. And then this is, of course, Blue's starter Pokemon. Okay, let's go ahead and head up toward Viridian City again. Go. Oh my god. I swear he always walks right in the leftmost patch of grass whenever I try to go through there. Finally made through that. Now that we've delivered the custom Pokeball and done all that and got the Pokedex, we can now come in here and... Hi there, may I help you? So, Pokemarts is just a shop in any other RPG. You can sell anything you want to them, pretty much. Or you can buy things from them. We're particularly interested in buying Pokeballs, because, of course, we're going to need lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of Pokeballs. I'm going to start off with buying 10. Should serve us quite nicely at the start. The shop finally has some potions in stock. Finally. You guys don't say anything new. That's disappointing. Dialogue that doesn't change. How does that work? Anyway, now that we have Pokeballs though, let's go ahead and come back down to Route 1 here and try and catch the Pokemon that we've been seeing. Batter number 1. Rattata. So, before we start talking about Rattata, I do want to point out that we have a new evolution method. Above the arrow in the evolution data, you can see there's a rare candy. Rare candy is a item that you can use to instantly level up Pokemon to the next level. It's just a single level up. One-time use consumable. And as such, it's meant to signify that your Pokemon will evolve through level up. And the level up requirement is actually listed below the arrow, so for Rattata, evolves at level 20. I do want to make it clear, though, that you don't need a rare candy to evolve. It's simply just level up to level 20 through any means necessary, whether it's getting experience through battling or using a rare candy, doesn't matter. And also, if you're worried about missing your chance to evolve, because if you didn't know, you can actually cancel Pokemon evolutions by hitting the B button while they're evolving, but then they just won't evolve. Whenever a Pokemon evolves through level up, they'll evolve at any level past their level up requirement, not just on their level up requirement. And so you hit 21, you hit 22, you hit 23, every single time you level up past 20, Rattata will try to evolve. So don't worry about missing it. Don't worry about catching one that's higher leveled than its level up requirement to evolve, because it'll just level up the next level. And now that we talked about that, I also want to point out the recommended moveset. I actually have it filled in with something this time. And I want to make clear that these recommended movesets, I am tailoring only to the final evolutions of the Pokemon. And so for Rattata here, this recommended moveset's specifically for Eradicate. I only evaluated Eradicate when I made it. I personally am not particularly interested in evaluating unevolved Pokemon when you have the option to evolve them, so forgive me there. Now, Rattata is a, pretty okay Pokemon. Its stat spread isn't great. Its base stat total is kind of absolute garbage. It's bottom 6 in the entire game. And specifically, its special stat is abysmal. I mean, look at the coloring. It's so blood red. It's so bad. However, thankfully, Rattata does not stay a Rattata forever and evolves kind of early into Eradicate. Now, Eradicate is a mediocre Pokemon, all things considered. I mean, look at its base stat total. But the thing that makes Eradicate kind of worth considering is that you get it so early, right? It's literally the first Pokemon we're talking about besides their starter. And as an early game Pokemon, Eradicate's kind of a beast. It has good enough stats to be able to act as a physical sweeper in the early game. And this is further enhanced by its move pool. Eradicate gets the move Hyper Fang by level up at level 14, and Hyper Fang does base 80 damage, which is insane for such an early move. It's just really good. And so, because of normal typing's unique properties of pretty much hitting everything neutrally, you're just going to be able to tear through things with Hyper Fang, and it'll be pretty fantastic until you hit the late game. And then Eradicate's base stats will start to really hold it back, and you'll be like, why do I still have this? So let's talk about my recommended moveset. First off, I put Body Slam on here. Body Slam is a base 85 power normal type move that will also have a 30% chance of paralyzing whatever it hits, which is just one of the best normal type moves in the game because of that secondary effect there. And it's just a really good stab move to put on Eradicate. I haven't talked about stab formally yet, so let me explain it real quick. Stab stands for same type attack bonus. It's as it sounds. It just literally gives a 1.5 times boost to a move if that move shares the same typing as its user. So for Eradicate, it gets stabbed with normal type moves because it is a normal type. And it's kind of like a pseudo super effective for any sort of thing. And it also stacks, by the way. You can have a stab move and also have it be super effective, and it'll just stack on top of each other, those boosts, which is really good. And then we move on to the second move here, which is Dig. The thing about normal types is the typing itself you're never really looking for, unless you're really specifically looking for a ghost immunity, but especially in Generation 1, ghost immunity isn't exactly important. And so, to make normal types more appealing to people, normal types pretty much always have a wider move pool than other types of Pokemon. And when I say wide move pool, I just mean that they learn multiple moves that are of different typings than whatever type the Pokemon is. And so for the case of Eradicate here, Eradicate actually learns Ice type moves, learns Water type moves, learns Electric type moves, and learns Dig. Something you might have noticed about all those types of moves I just listed is that they're all special typings. And of course, Eradicate's special stat is not good. So even though we do have the wide move pool, we're not going to be able to use it very well. Except for Dig, because Dig is the only physical attacking type that Eradicate gets access to that isn't normal type. And Dig is actually pretty good in Generation 1. It's 100 base power, putting it on par with the best ground type move in the game. However, the downside to Dig is that it takes 2 turns to use. The first turn, you dig down and you're in an invulnerability state, and then the second turn you actually attack. There's arguments to be had about whether you should be using Body Slam or be using Dig on certain Pokemon, because damage per turn, you're going to be doing more Body Slam. But if a Pokemon is quad weak to ground type, then Dig is going to do more damage per turn. The other thing about Dig, though, is that first turn, you're invulnerable to damage, which is nice. But Earthquake and Fissure can still hit you. So it's kind of a risky move to use if you're fighting anything that has those moves, but the main reason I put it on here isn't because of like, oh, well, in this particular case, it might do more damage. It's really for the Ghost-type Pokemon. The only Ghost-type Pokemon in the game are part Poison-type, which is weak to Ground-type, which means you're not having to use any of those other special typings moves to deal damage to Ghost-types, which is super nice for Raticate. Moving on, we have Super Fang, and Super Fang is actually a unique move to the Raticate line Generation 1. No other Pokemon in the game will learn Super Fang, and Super Fang itself is actually a pretty neat move. It will have the HP of whatever you attack. So if you fight a Pokemon with 400 HP, you use Super Fang on it, now it has 200 HP. This ignores everything, it's just a set damage move, so typings don't matter. And typings actually don't matter so much in Generation 1 that it will hit Ghost-type moves, or Ghost-types. This is kind of insane. It gives Raticate kind of a unique role, if you want, against Ghost-types, but Ghost-types aren't particularly abundant in this game. And so it's not like the most important thing ever. It's not game-changing, but it is pretty cool nonetheless, and kind of one of those Generation 1 quirks that you can take advantage of. And then we have Bubble Beam. Bubble Beam is our coverage move against rock types, rock being the only typing that resists normal types. And furthermore, most rock types are also part ground type, so you're going to be doing quad effective damage with Bubble Beam on them. So even though Raticate's special stat is very, 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 very bad, Bubble Beam should be able to clean up shop on most of those rock types that might give your Raticate trouble. So, do I recommend Eradicate? Not really. Like, if it were me, I would not pick this Pokemon up pretty much ever. The only reason I would recommend it is if you are interested in a playstyle where you use a Pokemon and then you eventually replace it with something else. Because if you do that, Eradicate in the early game is such a monster that if you're willing to just replace it with a better normal type or just a different type of Pokemon in general later in the game, then it can make a lot of sense to pick up Eradicate. However, as like a permanent team member to use late game, it's a tough sell. Eradicate doesn't really have anything useful going for it in the late game. Super Fang is the only like particularly interesting move, and even then that's not gonna get you through a whole lot of things, especially in the single player game. So that does it for Eradicate. The rat Pokemon will chew on anything with its fangs. If you see one, it is certain that 40 more live in the area. Batter number 2. Pidgey is the other Pokemon on Route 1 for us to grab. It's also the nail in the coffin for a trend that will continue on through the entire series, where the equivalent Route 1 of every single region will have a pure normal type, like Rattata, and a normal flying type, like Pidgey here. Speaking of normal flying type, this is the first Pokemon we've encountered that has a dual typing. And dual typing is cool, but maybe not as cool as it might sound right off the bat, because dual typing actually has no offensive benefit or drawback at all. And this is largely because there's no moves that are dual typing. Every single move is only single typing. And so your Pokemon having a dual type doesn't mean anything really, at least for offenses. The only real thing that you get offensively from having a dual type is that you get stab on both of your Pokemon's types, which is like pretty nice, but it's not exactly game changing. At least not in the same way that the dual typing is for defenses. So if you recall what we were talking about with single typings and how the types interact with each other in a pseudo rock paper scissors way, this goes double for dual typings essentially. Any sort of multiplier that we talked about when talking about typings, you can essentially just multiply together for each of the typings on your Pokemon. And so normal is kind of a weird type to talk about this with, unfortunately. But let's say that we had like a fire flying type. Fire and flying both resist the grass type. And so actually you would have a quad resistance to the grass type. You just multiply the two resistances of 1/2 together to get 1/4. We call it quad resistance because of the 4, I guess, even though it's kind of more like double resistance, but I digress. And like that's like the good side of it. There's also a bad side of it, and where if you have two typings with the exact same weakness, let's say ground and flying, then you're going to have a quad weakness to ice, for example, or any other thing that both of the typings are weak to. That's a 4x damage on your Pokemon just because of its typing. So dual typing can be both good and bad. Otherwise, with all the ×1s for neutrals, it's kind of just like adding the two resistances together for anything that they don't share resistances for. And that goes also for immunities. If one type resists, but the other one has an immunity, the immunity essentially just overwrites because anything ×0 is 0. And same thing for weaknesses. If you have one type that's weak to something, but the other type is immune to that same weakness typing, then the immunity will win out because it's ×0. So there's a lot of cool interactions defensively with dual typings, and normal flying type specifically isn't a interesting dual type in any sense. Adding normal as a second typing to any other type automatically makes it pretty boring because normal typing doesn't really do a whole lot. You add a ghost immunity to whatever it is, which could be cool, but usually is not. And then of course you also add a fighting weakness, which in the case of the flying type, it will cancel it out and you'll just take neutral damage from fighting types. So that is dual typing in a nutshell. And then we also have our first instance of a 3-stage evolution. Not to be confused with the Pokemon trading card game stages definition for evolution, because for some reason instead of being like stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, they go basic, stage 1, stage 2. It's kind of weird, but whenever I'm talking about 2-stage or 3-stage evolutions, I am referring to how many different species are within one evolutionary line. Rattata is a 2-stage line, and Pidgey here is a 3-stage line. Pidgey's stats by itself are very uninspiring, a lot like Rattata's. It's basically not even worth talking about. The only thing I do want to mention about it, though, is because it takes until level 18 to evolve into Pidgeotto, you're going to be stuck with these stats for quite a while, and it's about the same time frame as Rattata to Eradicate, but it's not entirely inspiring when you look at Pidgeotto itself and you see that stats really aren't that much better. Like, they're okay, I guess. They're not like incredibly amazing, but for the fact that you can get Eradicate at this basically the same level and have it have a base stat total of almost 50 points more is not looking good for Pidgeotto. It's kind of like a tacked on middle stage evolution that it didn't need, in my opinion. But thankfully, once you evolve into a Pidgeot, you get pretty good base stats overall. Like, you're on the higher end of the mediocre spectrum. And overall, Pidgeot kind of has a more balanced stat distribution. You could conceivably use Pidgeot as a mixed attacker in this generation, but that brings us to a very glaring problem with Pidgeot, is its move pool. Pidgeot has the most abysmal move pool that you'll pretty much find in any Pokemon. It learns only stab moves for its attacking moves, meaning it only learns normal and flying type attacking moves. And on top of that, it doesn't really learn any of the good ones. So you can't take advantage of its special stat because there's no special typing attacks that you can learn on it. And you don't get any coverage, so if anything resists your normal type and your flying type, you're just boned. And here's what gets me the most about Pidgeot's move pool. Pidgeot doesn't learn a single flying type move by level up until level 31 if you're evolving it as soon as possible. And the move that you learn at this level, this high level, is Wing Attack. Wing Attack has a base power of 35. It's such an abysmal move to have as like your best flying type move. It's so bad, and there's no real TMs that can make up for it. And furthermore, there is exactly 4 different evolutionary lines of normal flying type Pokemon in the game. Every other single one of those lines learns the move Peck, which is also a flying type move, and also base power 35 at level 1. They just come with it. It's like they just forgot to give it to Pidgey. It's like mind-boggling how dumb it is, especially considering Pidgeot's base stats, even as a Pidgeot, aren't that good. It's a baffling thing to me. I still can't wrap my head around it. The only sort of consolation prize you get here is that Pidgeot does learn the HM Fly, and if you don't know what Fly is essentially the Pokemon version of Fast Travel, and so it's not required, but it is really nice to have, and you'll probably want to put it on any team that you make. And so Pidgeot's one of the select lucky few that get to learn Fly, especially in Red and Blue. Now, I just ragged on Pidgeot like a lot there, but overall I do like Pidgeot still. Like, I like its design. I like the idea of it being this kind of complementary 3-stage Pokemon, because all of the actual Kanto starters are also 3 stages, and they evolve about the same levels as Pidgey does here. And so, like, in theory I like it. It's just, man, you look at it and you're like, wow, it's just not good. Like, every other normal flying type is better than this one, and the only thing that Pidgey really excels at that the other normal flying types don't is that it's more bulky. It has pretty respectable defenses, with its defense and its special being what they are. But again, in single player, you do not necessarily care about bulk as much as you do about being able to sweep things, and so even for a bulky Pokemon, its bulk isn't like anything impressive. So I can't really think of a like super defined role on a team that I would want to give this, because it doesn't really do anything besides use its really crappy wing attack. And this is going to bring me to a problem that I haven't discussed yet, but is a problem with some Pokemon. In Generation 1, there is TMs and HMs and then level up moves. TMs are single use only, so you get one of them, or maybe if you're lucky you can buy them somewhere for having an infinite source of them, and then you use it and it's consumed. So for the most part, you're essentially getting to be able to put that move on one Pokemon, and that's it. And then there's HMs, and HMs are infinite use, so you don't have to worry about those as much, but HMs are generally not exactly the best moves to put on your Pokemon. And so there's a real thing in Pokemon where you go, do I need to use TMs to actually make this Pokemon good? And if so, it kind of devalues it a little bit for an in-game playthrough, because it's going to take up TMs that you could put on other Pokemon. And Pidgeot's kind of a prime example of having just a terrible moveset that you're going to have to use TMs to patch up. And like I was kind of saying earlier, sadly, Pidgeot doesn't get anything amazing, even through TM. So let's talk about my recommended moveset, because it was kind of a pain to come up with this. In our first slot, I have Hyper Beam. Essentially, the reason I have this here is because Hyper Beam is a great stab move for a normal type, having 150 base power. The downside of Hyper Beam is that you'll fire it and then it'll take a turn to recharge after that, and in which you can't do anything. And so it's a 2-turn move, but you hit on the first turn instead of the second turn. And you're not like invulnerable or anything like you are with Dig. So that's the big downside of Hyper Beam. The thing about Generation 1 though is that Hyper Beam has a lot of weird quirks that make it not nearly as bad as it turns it out to be in later generations. Namely, if you knock out the opposing Pokemon with Hyper Beam, you don't have to recharge afterwards. You actually skip the recharge turn. And so you can just spam Hyper Beam as long as you keep knocking things out. Now, Pidgeot's not winning any awards with its attack stat, and it's not going to be outspeeding everything in the game. And so you're not really going to be knocking things out with Hyper Beam in one shot all that often, unless you just like severely out-level them. With all that said, why did I put Hyper Beam on here anyway? Well, it's basically the only good normal type move that you can give a Pidgeot. The only things that will do more damage per turn than Hyper Beam, so over the course of 2 turns, that will surpass 150 base power, is Razor Wind, Takedown, and Double Edge. The latter 2 of those moves are recoil moves, so you'll do damage to yourself by using them. And the first one is 75% accurate, and it's also a 2-turn move. That's what we're working with here. Everything else does not do as much damage per turn as Hyper Beam. And so that's why I ended up putting it on here. It's like the only saving grace normal type move that you have. And then additionally, there isn't anything better to give Pidgeot in place of this. Like there's no other like status move or anything that I would rather give it. So that's why we have Hyper Beam here. Moving to slot 2, we have Sky Attack. Like I kind of mentioned earlier, Pidgeot does not learn almost any flying type moves. It learns Wing Attack, it learns Fly, and it learns Sky Attack. That is it. Now, I mentioned this before, but I'll repeat it. My movesets, my recommended movesets aren't tailored towards like TM use or HM use or anything like that, so you know, conceivably someone might want to put Fly out here instead of Sky Attack, but ignoring the like utility of HMs, looking at them as only moves, and then ignoring the fact that TMs are one-time use, and you might want to put it on something else. Sky Attack ends up being the best flying type move to put on a Pidgeot because it will do the most damage per turn once again. Sky Attack is a 2-turn move where you'll hit on the second turn, like Dig, but you're not invulnerable on the first turn like you are with Dig, and so you just have to tank the damage on that first turn before you get to attack. But when you do get to attack, you do 140 base power of damage, which is pretty damn good. Unfortunately, of course, that averages out to be the same as Fly's base power, but Fly is also a 2-turn move, so it's a whole thing. Sky Attack over Fly for me, though, was... Well, Pidgeot's kind of bulky, so I guess if there's a flying type to use Sky Attack on, a normal flying type, I should say, to use Sky Attack on, Pidgeot is kind of your guy in that sense. Might as well use its bulk for something. And then we have Mirror Move. Mirror Move is a weird move because it lets you just use whatever the opponent used last as your move. It doesn't like copy it into your move slot. It doesn't replace Mirror Move, but it does let you actually just use the move. And even though Mirror Move itself is a flying type move, the result isn't a flying type move being used. It's whatever typing of the move that you are using, right? So if your opponent uses Flamethrower, that's a fire type move. You use Mirror Move to then use it yourself. You'll still use Flamethrower as a fire type move, and you'll still do everything that Flamethrower does. It's kind of confusing, but that's how it works. And the reason I have it on here is because it kind of helps Pidgeot with its move pool problem of not having any sort of coverage at all. Even if it is a very limited circumstance coverage option, because you have to rely on the opponent to use something that you actually want to use yourself, which is not going to happen very often, but I guess it's better than nothing. And trust me, there is basically nothing else to put here. And the thing about Mirror Move is that you generally want to have a fast Pokemon use it, because if you're going slower than the opponent, you'll move last on a turn. So then your opponent will use whatever move it wants, and then you'll use Mirror Move, and you're already locked into it. So you can't just be like, oh no, it used Growl. I don't want to use Growl. It's going to do it anyway, right? Whereas if you go first on a turn, you can see what they used last turn, and then the next turn you'll go first, and then you'll know for sure that you're using whatever it is that they used, right? So Pidgeot isn't the fastest Pokemon out there, but it is respectably fast for what it is. And we can patch that up with our fourth move, Agility. Agility just raises your speed by 2 stages. And it's one of the best speed raising moves in the game, actually. And so it synergizes well with Mirror Move for the reasons I just outlined. But furthermore, it actually works really well in Generation 1 specifically, because if you get paralyzed, I mentioned that there is the side effect of lowering your speed to 1/4 of what it used to be whenever you get paralyzed. And for whatever reason, if you use a speed raising move, or maybe even a speed lowering move, it will actually cancel out the initial 1/4 speed from paralysis and just act like it doesn't exist. And so you get paralyzed, you use Agility, and suddenly you're at +2, like the paralysis doesn't exist anymore, even though you'll still get the chance of not being able to move because of paralysis every turn. And so that makes agility uniquely good to use in Generation 1. And that's another reason that I have it on Pidgeot's moveset here. Now, all in all, I can't recommend Pidgeot, unfortunately. It doesn't have anything going for it. In fact, it so doesn't have anything going for it that it gets outclassed pretty much immediately. Like, you can catch something at the same time as you can catch a Pidgey, and it'll just be better than Pidgey. So, let's just move on. The tiny bird Pokemon. Very docile. If attacked, it will often kick up sand to protect itself rather than fight back. Okay, now that we've caught both of the Pokemon in this route, those are the only 2 Pokemon there, we're gonna head back up and I'm gonna go ahead and deposit the catches that we've just made into the PC and heal. Okay, so I do want to show depositing into the PC, since we haven't done it before, you know. So we're gonna go ahead and deposit the Rattata. Deposit. Then we'll deposit the Pidgey. And that's all she wrote. Now that they're in the boxes, of course we could release them if we wanted to, but we're not going to. And something I do want to point out while we're here again is this change box. Change box is very important in Generation 1 because you need to do this if a box gets full. It'll make you save before you can do it. But then it'll pull up and go, which box do you want to change to? In Generation 1, on the international version anyway, you have 12 total boxes, and each box can hold 20 Pokemon in it. So once you've filled up a box with 20 Pokemon, if you try to catch another Pokemon, but you haven't changed your box to a different one that's not full, the game will be like, oh, well, it didn't work. And so before you get your super rare encounter that you've been grinding for like the whole day, and then you find out your box is full, just keep tabs on it so that you know when you need to change it out when you're good to go. Okay, so now all that is done. If we come up here, you're not on the ground anymore. Ah, I've had my coffee now, and I feel great. Sure, you can go through. I'm sorry I was so rude to you. I see you're using a Pokedex. I'll show you how to catch Pokemon as my apology. Bro, I've already caught Pokemon. Old man used Pokeball. How come everyone gets a battle with that Pokemon, but I have that Pokemon? And you didn't even catch it. That didn't work. I must be losing my touch. I've run out of Pokeballs too. I have to go to get some at Pokemon Mart. See ya, I guess. When I go shop in Pewter City, I have to take the winding trail in Viridian Forest. Oh, we finally get to go up here. Oh, sweet freedom. Viridian City Pokemon Gym. Oh, we've been hearing so much about these gyms. And by that I mean I think one person has mentioned it. The gym's doors are locked. Yeah, I didn't do that. It automatically kicks you down the ledge when you go in front of the door. This Pokemon gym is always closed. I wonder who the leader is. Well, that seems cumbersome. Like, how is that legal to be running a gym, but then also be able to have it closed for prolonged periods of time? Trainer tips. Catch Pokemon and expand your collection. The more you have, the easier it is to fight. Ain't that the truth? Route 2, Viridian City to Pure City. Yeah, so up here, actually there is a patch of grass here. However, there's no Pokemon in this grass that can't be more easily found somewhere else nearby. And while I'm talking about that, something I want to clarify is for this Let's Play, I'm going to not be catching the most easily catched version of every Pokemon. I'm actually going to catch them as soon as you can. That's going to be the way I catch wild Pokemon. However, if we're like in this like area where you have all these other options open to you, and there's a way to catch a Pokemon that's easier on one of those options that's within the same, you know, timeline of events, then I will catch it there instead. I'll choose the easiest option if it makes sense. So up here, are you going to Viridian Forest? Be careful, it's a natural maze. You have to roam far to get new kinds of Pokemon. Look for other types outside of Viridian Forest. And this is the Viridian Forest that we've heard so much about in the last few minutes. Trainer tips. Weaken Pokemon before attempting capture. When healthy, they may escape. I came here with some friends. They're out for Pokemon fights. So actually in this tree here, there is an antidote that you can pick up. Very much worth your time and effort. And then up here, there's a Pokeball in the grass, which will be very handy for us because we need to catch some Pokemon here. And we've already found it. Caterpie! Now I know what you're thinking. You're looking at stats and you're like, what the hell is this garbage? And I don't blame you, because Caterpie is tied with one other Pokemon as having the worst base stat total in the entire game. It's that bad. And you're gonna be stuck with it for a long time because Pokemon Yellow is based off of the anime, right? And in the anime, we all know that Caterpie is a very special Pokemon. And so Pokemon Yellow gives it some special attention, requiring you to get a level 50 before Caterpie will evolve into just slightly better garbage. Yeah, Metapod is not much better. It gets 5 extra base stat total points. It's tied again with one other Pokemon for being the second worst base stat total in the game. I know, they're really teasing you there. And you're going to be stuck with that until you get to level 100, the highest level you can possibly have a Pokemon in the game at all. Every Pokemon will cap at level 100. But if you can get it there, then you get Butterfree. Look at the glorious stats that Butterfree has in Pokemon Yellow. Obviously, this thing is a beast and a half. It is unrivaled in all of Pokemon for being the strong. Okay, maybe I lied. For posterity, let's go back. This is the real evolution data for Caterpie. It only evolves at level 7, and then furthermore, Metapod evolves at level 10. Yeah, unfortunately, as much as I want it to be true, Butterfree is not the most godly of Pokemon to have ever existed, and it is actually just completely unchanged from Pokemon Red and Blue to Pokemon Yellow. But it was nice to be able to see the godly stats for at least like a little bit. Everything else about Caterpie and Metapod is actually completely correct. Their stats actually are that bad, and furthermore, it doesn't help that Caterpie is a bug type, and bug type is notoriously one of the worst typings in Pokemon history, but especially so in this generation. This is for a few reasons. One of the reasons is that there are basically no good bug type stat moves in the game, and so you're just not going to be able to use Stab on your Pokemon. And this is compounded by the fact that even if there are a couple of bug-type moves, even if they're bad, Caterpie doesn't learn any of them. That's right, you have a bug-type that doesn't learn any bug-type moves. This is kind of a sad theme throughout Pokemon, is that especially early generations, they'll just have a Pokemon, and they're like, yeah, let's just not give it any stab moves. So that's okay. The only bug-type move that Caterpie does learn is String Shot, which is a status move. It's not an attacking move. And in fact, Caterpie itself is notoriously bad because it only learns 2 moves ever. Tackle and String Shot. It comes with them, and it will literally never learn anything else ever again. And in fact, you actually can't teach it anything else either via TM or HM. So thankfully though, they do let us evolve it super early into Metapod at level 7. And it, again, doesn't get much better. It is mimicking, of course, a butterfly's metamorphosis changes. So it's cocooning, and it kind of rearranges its stats to be more defensive. And the only consolation prize you get for this is you get to learn the move Harden, which raises your defense. Yeah. You still can't learn any HMs or TMs as a Metapod, but you only have to put up with that for 3 more levels, and at level 10, you finally get to Butterfree. Now, these are Butterfree's real stats. They're not exactly, pleasing to look at, necessarily. And, I mean, come on. There are Pokemon that start with base stats around this total. Not fully evolved, and now they're just getting to this total. It's really rough, but of course, from a game design perspective, this actually makes a lot of sense. It evolves so early, literally you'll never find a Pokemon that can evolve twice and be fully evolved at this low level. And as such, it's kind of more of a early game, good option. If you're using it specifically for the early game, it's pretty damn good. You're not going to find a whole lot of Pokemon that can do what Butterfree does at this low level. However, once you get past the early game, it just starts falling off really quickly, and if you're still using it, then you're in for a time. I can't say I recommend it. But, regardless, I did have to make a moveset for it. And as we can see from it, Butterfree's stats, it's mainly a special attacker. Bug and Flying are both physical types, and again, despite that, it doesn't learn any stab moves. Literally no Flying type moves, no Bug type moves, nothing. So even if you wanted to use its crummy attack stat, you couldn't do it anyway. And that leaves us with its special stats. And it gets a couple of decent special attacking moves, the most notable one being Psychic, that you have to give to it by TM. And if you're going to give anything Psychic by TM, it probably shouldn't be this, but I mean, that's not what the recommended movesets are for. They're for what's the best set we can give to this Pokemon specifically, and so that's why it's on here. We'll use Butterfree's special stat pretty well. I mean, Psychic is just a goated type in Generation 1, so you can't really go wrong. And then we have Mega Drain. Mega Drain is a grass type move that will restore health proportionally to how much health you actually drain from your opponent. Let's be honest, Butterfree is not really using Mega Drain for its healing properties. It's not going to really live enough hits to make that worth it. It's not tanky enough for that. But it's the only other type of move that it can learn that's also special. And there is Solar Beam, but Solar Beam is a 2-turn move. The first turn taking the charge, so it's not really worth putting on a Butterfree over Mega Drain when you'd rather just be able to do the damage right now. It's hardly going to be able to live that 1 turn of charging if you try to use Solar Beam, so that's why Mega Drain's on here. It could help it with some type coverage to take out things that are quad weak to grass, I guess. And then the rest of its moveset is just whatever seems the most useful, and so that's why Sleep Powder and Stun Spore are on here. They're both 75% accurate status moves. Sleep Powder puts things to sleep, and Stun Spore paralyzes things. They're a nice utility to have. They're not the most reliable thing in the world, but they're better than nothing. And if you're playing Pokemon Yellow, Butterfree does learn Flash as an HM, and so you might consider, if you're actually going to use this thing for the entire game, putting Flash on it, making it a Flash user. Just food for thought there. But again, that's only for Pokemon Yellow. If you're playing Red or Blue, then you don't get Flash as an available move, unfortunately. Additionally, I also wanted to bring up that there is the move Psywave, which is a Psychic type move. And Psywave is kind of weird how it works because it is a fixed damage move. Kind of. It's like a fixed damage move, but it's random at the same time. Because it will do damage between either exactly 1 health, or 1 damage I should say, and 1.5 times your Pokemon's level damage. So if you have Pokemon that's level 10, it could do up to 15 damage. 1.5 times 10, right? So the higher level you are, the more useful Psywave is going to be. And because it does fixed damage, the typing doesn't matter a whole lot, so you can pretty much just hit everything pretty well. I decided against putting it on here because it's not super reliable, and by the time that you should be done using Butterfree, it's not going to be a good move anyway. Let alone, I don't even know if you have access to it by the time that you want to stop using Butterfree, because it is a TM move, and I don't remember when you get it, but regardless, again, great early game Pokemon Butterfree is, but only if you're willing to actually trade it out for something after it stops becoming useful, after it gets outpaced. Otherwise, I can't recommend using this. The worm Pokemon. If you touch the feeler on top of its head, it will release a horrible stink to protect itself. And believe it or not, that's actually the only encounter in here that we actually want. I will mention though, in Pokemon Yellow, you can find a Metapod in here, which is of course the evolved form of Caterpie. And so you could catch that instead if you want, but I wouldn't recommend it because they only know Harden, and so you're going to have to switch train it if you want to use it. Additionally, there's also a Pidgeotto that you can find 1% of the time exclusively in Yellow in the Viridian Forest, and that is maybe worth it because that's the only way you're going to find, one, a level 9 Pokemon this early in the game, which is out of the gate, and 2, the only way you're going to get a Pidgeotto that leveled, because Pidgey doesn't evolve until level 18, so I'm going to heal. Alright, I've healed, and now, instead of continuing through Viridian Forest, I actually want to head over this way, because there is actually a route over here. And this is, if we check our town map, Route 22. I know, big jump from Route 2 to Route 22, but they give you access to this area early in the game, and there is actually some unique Pokemon that you can only get on those routes. Let's go ahead and find some. Nidoran Female is a interesting Pokemon because Generation 1 did not have genders for Pokemon, and yet here we go. We have a female Pokemon. It says it right there in the name. Nidoran Female. As you might expect, there is a Nidoran Male swimming around out there, but what gives? Why is Nidoran special and gets a gender? Honestly, I have no idea. It's not like they're version exclusives or anything. Maybe it was like a test to see like the idea of gendering Pokemon and making them a little bit different. Or like, who knows? There might be like some developer thing out there talking about it, but anyway. As such, people tend to think of Nidoran Female and Nidoran Male kind of as like a pair. in the same way that people might think of like Tauros and Miltank as like a pair, kind of two sides of the same coin. But talking about specifically Nidoran female, she, compared to her male counterpart, is a kind of more bulky defensive option, whereas her counterpart is a little bit more of an offensive option. And so as such, Nidoran female's stats, I would say, are less valuable to a single player in-game playthrough compared to Nidoran male. So what do I have to say about this Pokemon? Well, let's just go ahead and talk about Nidorina, what Nidoran female evolves into at level 16. Nidorina is a little bit better than Nidoran female. Actually, quite a bit better. It's almost a 100-point jump in base stat total, which is actually pretty nice, especially at such a low level. And by the time that you get to level 16, this kind of scales well, in my opinion, with where you're going to be at in the game at that time. So Nidorina definitely is keeping pace. And we actually have a new evolution method in the Moonstone, which is what that is up there. The Moonstone is actually found really early in the game. Like you might even find one before you get to level 16 to evolve Nidoran female. And so you could have a fully evolved Nidoqueen pretty much before the second gym, which is really good because Nidoqueen has pretty good stats. Definitely on the higher end of stats in the game. Even though they're still in the mediocre range, I'll spoil that not a lot of Pokemon get out of the mediocre range. There's very, very few that get into the green, as it were. So once you get above like 400, you're kind of talking some good Pokemon. And something else about Nidoqueen is that she gains a ground type. Now, poison typing is really weak in Generation 1 because psychic types are so prevalent. But for in-game, you don't really encounter a whole lot of psychic types, so it's not a big deal. And the ground typing is very nice to have as an attacker. However, I did say that Nidoqueen is more bulky, defensive-oriented, and you can kind of see with her stats that her HP is actually like pretty damn good in the green, just barely, but in the green. And her defense is pretty high, almost equal to her HP. And everything else is like pretty on par. Like we're kind of have an even stat spread, which is it's kind of appreciated. I tend to favor more specialized stat distributions, but an even stat spread you can't really complain about. You might be looking at my recommended moveset and going, that doesn't really seem to take advantage of Nidoqueen's bulk at all. And you're right, it really doesn't. I, again, as a single player in-game moveset recommendation, don't really see the need to take advantage of Nidoqueen's bulk in the moveset specifically. An option, if you do want to try to do that, is to put Substitute on Nidoqueen, because Substitute is a move that gets rid of a quarter of your HP and literally substitutes out your Pokemon with like a doll type thing, and it will take damage up to the same amount of HP put into it before it disappears. And so it can actually tank extra damage besides the quarter of your HP, and it won't like spill over and hit your Pokemon. It just like tanks all of it, and then it poof disappears. And obviously if they do less damage than a quarter of your HP, it'll stay there and then tank another hit. So Substitute's actually pretty good. The reason I didn't really put it in the moveset though is just because I didn't think it was really necessary. It is definitely an option though, and not a bad one by any means. However, Nidoqueen's moveset is very, very wide. She has a very wide move pool. Even wider than like Eradicates, for example, who I kind of was gassing up a little bit for having a wide move pool as a normal type. For whatever reason, they went hard with the Nidoran Line's movesets, and there's a lot here. There's water type moves, there's ice type moves, there's normal type moves, there's poison type moves, there's fighting type moves, there's ground type moves, there's electric type moves, there's even fire type moves and rock type moves. There's basically a move for everything. You don't get a whole lot better than this, especially in Gen 1. Let me clarify, if you get better in it over time, just because they started power creeping. But in Generation 1, this is about as good as it gets in terms of a wide move pool. And we are definitely going to be taking advantage of that. Something I do want to point out, though, is that stone evolutions tend to not get level up moves once they evolve with the stone. Nidoqueen is an exception. At level 23, Nidoqueen gets Body Slam, and so if you evolve Nidoqueen before then, you'll get access to Body Slam, or evolve Nidorina before then, you'll get access to Body Slam. Or at the same level. If you evolve a Pokemon on the same level they would have learned to move as their evolution, they should still learn it. I guess I haven't really fact-checked that for Generation 1, but I believe it works like that, at least in the future. And so you can see up in the recommended moves that I do have Body Slam in there, so I wanted to kind of mention that and get that out of the way. Now, the rest of my moveset. Earthquake is a must as a ground type. Earthquake is a 100 base power move with 100% accuracy, and that's it. Like, it just wrecks house, and it's so nice. It's arguably one of the best moves in the game, if not the best move, just because it has 10 PP, which is a lot for such a high power move, and ground is such a good attacking type. So, I mean, obviously you're gonna put that on there. Unfortunately, there isn't really any good poison attacking moves. Not that poison as an attacking type is a good attacking type. It doesn't really hit anything super effectively. But if you were kind of interested in having a poison attacking move, the best you're going to get is Poison Sting, which is absolutely terrible. So I wouldn't recommend that. Moving on, something in Generation 1 that has like a level of fame to it is called the Blizzbolt strategy, which is Blizzard and Thunderbolt on the same moveset. Because Blizzard and Thunderbolt, being Ice and Electric type, will cover the entire spectrum of types and at least hit them neutrally, if not super effectively. It's really powerful and really good if you can get it onto a Pokemon, which is basically why I have it on here. You have the ultimate coverage. And Blizzard itself is a 120 base power, 90% accurate move in Generation 1. Later generations, it drops down to 70% accuracy, but in this generation, it's 90%. That is insane for a move this powerful, and especially because it's not like a 2-turn move or anything like that, and it has a 10% chance to freeze. I was saying Earthquake might be the best move in the game, Blizzard might be the best move in the game. The only real downside to Blizzard is it only has 5 PP, so, I mean, how off are you going without Pokemon there, right? Anyway, Blizzard, if you're going to use an Ice-type move, while Ice Beam does do the job pretty well, Generation 1 Blizzard is like so hard to beat. However, you obviously have to choose a Pokemon to get Blizzard to, and so you might not want to give it to Nidoqueen specifically, but that's not what my recommended moveset accounts for, so that's why it's on here. Thunderbolt is just a really good Electric-type move. It's arguably the best in the game. The only one that does more damage than it is Thunder, which is 120 base power, but it's only 70% accurate, which is what Blizzard should have been. But it does have 10 PP to make up for that. Thunderbolt, on the other hand, is 95 base power at 100% accuracy and 15 PP. And so I just, people tend to value accuracy over raw power. And so that's why it's Blizzbolt and not Thunderzerd. Blizzard. Blizzard. I hate that. Why did I say that out loud? Anyway, so that's the recommended moveset. You have Blizzbolt, you have Earthquake. I put Body Slam on there instead of like Substitute, for example, mainly because Body Slam has a 30% chance to paralyze, which is really good. And just in general, being able to paralyze something is just really good. And 30% chance of doing it while doing 85 base power of damage is hard to beat. Body Slam is definitely one of the better moves in the game. And you do learn Body Slam by level up if you evolve Nidorina soon enough, like I was mentioning earlier. So having a free body slam in your moveset is even better. And so that was kind of my like substitute, pun intended, for not including substitute in the moveset, is kind of taking advantage of the bulk through inflicting status, but also damage at the same time. Oh, real quick, something I forgot about substitute. Substitute also prevents the opponent from using any sort of status move on you. They can't lower one of your stats like attack or defense, and they also can't paralyze you or poison you or anything like that. That's one of the main reasons that substitute is actually as good as it is. The Poison Pin Pokemon. A mild-mannered Pokemon that does not like to fight. Beware, its small horns secrete venom. And here we have Spearow. Spearow is one of the other normal flying types that you will find in the very, very early game, as in right now. And because Spearow is normal flying type and is exactly the same as Pidgey in that regard, this is actually going to be relatively short because we have something to compare it to. We don't have a lot of new stuff to talk about. And so in regards to that, Spearow is a kind of run-of-the-mill, not very... Again, there's literally nothing new to talk about. And in comparison to Pidgey, the Pidgey line, Spearow's stat spread is a little bit more weighted towards attacking speed, kind of obviously. And that is really the main difference between the two lines, besides that the Pidgey line is a 3-stage evolution line and the Spearow line is instead a 2-stage evolution line. So let's go ahead and immediately jump right into Spearow. Spearow is kind of a goated normal flying type in this particular game. Considering how early that you can get it, and considering like the overall prevalence of normal flying types in Pokemon, in this game in particular, Spearow is, it's a really strong pick. And most of that has to do with stat spread. Attack and speed are always just like good to have, this whole sweeper thing. Especially on a normal flying type, because normal flying are both physical attacking types. And the other major advantage that the Spearow line has over the Pidgeot line is that you can get a Spearow by level 20. You need to wait till level 36 to get a Pidgeot. Their base stat total is not that far off. Spearow has just a little bit less base stat total, but it's one of those situations where stat allocation triumphs over raw total. And this is very much true for Spearow. In general, Spearow is just going to be a better Pokemon for you to use in the single player game, and probably even in competitive. I'm kind of just saying off the top of my head, I don't actually know, but if I had to take a guess, I would say that. And the thing about Spearow is that I'm kind of gassing it up, but Spearow's move pool is just as pathetic as Pidgeot's. So much so that their movesets, my recommended movesets for them, are pretty much exactly the same. The only difference is, instead of recommending Sky Attack, I recommend Drill Peck. Drill Peck is not exclusive to the Spearow line, but it is not on the Pidgeot line, which is the important part here, because Drill Peck is the best flying type move in the game. It's not even a question, unless you want to consider the utility of Fly as an HM move, but disregarding that as like a purely attacking move, Drill Peck wins every day. In fact, Sky Attack damage per turn does less than Drill Peck, because Drill Peck does 80 base power of damage per turn. Sky Attack only does 70 per turn.
And Drill Peck is 100% accurate. Sky Attack is only 90%. And Drill Peck has 20 PP. Sky Attack has 5 PP. It's like not even a contest. That alone, combined with Spearow's excellent attack and speed stats, make it a really strong pick if you're going for a flying type to use Fly on at some point. Obviously, replacing like Mirror Move with Fly is not a bad idea. And you'll have a Pokemon that can put in some work, at least compared to Pidgeot. So, for me, it's clear cut on which one is better if you were to choose between the two. That being said, Spearow, even as a flying type, isn't the end all be all. If you specifically want to use a flying type for the flying type itself, and rather than for defensive reasons or for learning the move Fly, you're probably better off with a different Pokemon later. But this is a very strong contender, and I wouldn't blame you for picking it up. If instead you're looking to use the flying type defensively or just as a Pokemon that can learn Fly, there's better options because the normal typing isn't doing any favors really, and you're better off probably with something that has a different type with a flying secondary type. So overall, Spearow is a fantastic Pokemon, especially to get this early in the game, especially with how fast it evolves. Definitely worth a consideration on any team.
The tiny bird Pokemon. Inept at flying high, however it can fly around very fast to protect its territory.
This Pokemon... Wait. Do you see what I see? There's a big, glaring problem with this Pokemon. If you see it, comment it down below. If you don't see it, pause and figure it out, because I'm about to spoil it right now. This Pokemon is a version-exclusive Pokemon. That's right, the blue cartridge is missing that's normally there in the layout. That means that you cannot get a Mankey in Pokemon Blue natively. You have to trade it from either Pokemon Red or Pokemon Yellow to get it there. I know, I don't make the rules. It's okay, you'll live. Unfortunately, this means that Mankey is automatically excluded from being an option for my team. But, you know, if you want to use a Mankey, you can certainly do so. And if you want to use a fighting type, Mankey is one of very, very limited options in Generation 1 for a fighting type at all. And it's one of the better ones, in my opinion. Before we get too much further, I want to point out that something weird about Mankey is Mankey normally in Pokemon Red is much further in the game than it is right here. You don't encounter it until like after the second gym, or at the second gym, if you will. In this game, you encounter it right here, way before the first gym. And the real reason for this is because of getting Pikachu as your starter. And so they're like, we need to give a fighting type in the early game to help shore up Pikachu's weaknesses, to complement Pikachu and give coverage. And so we have Mankey here. Mankey being a pure fighting type, again, very limited options. Pure fighting type is kind of... it's like okay. Especially in Generation 1, it's kind of mid, maybe even bad. It's one of those, if you're weak to Psychic, you're probably bad in Generation 1. But because it's in-game, Psychic isn't the end-all be-all. And you aren't going to suffer by choosing a Mankey to put on your team. besides maybe with like type coverage eventually. Because fighting type is a good offensive type. It hits quite a lot of things super effectively. And it's the only typing in the game that can hit normal super effectively. And there are quite a few normal types in Generation 1, so that could be useful. However, it's not winning any awards. It's kind of a only, you know, like you can't do much other than use fighting and normal type attacks usually. Sometimes you get some like access to random moves of a different type, but it's mostly just going to be fighting and normal type moves, and that gives you a problem against ghost types, but there's only one ghost type in the game, so it's not a huge deal. It'll just make like a certain section of the game kind of a pain in the ass to use this particular Pokemon. But thankfully, the move pool for the Mankey line isn't that bad as long as you're willing to invest TMs. So when you're thinking about Mankey's role in a team, it's going to just be physical attacker that can hit things that are weak to fighting pretty damn well, and things that aren't weak to fighting good enough with its pretty large attack stat. Let's go ahead and look at Primeape. Primeape is quite the heavy hitter. That attack stat, 105, we haven't seen a stat in general that high as of yet. And you can kind of tell that this Pokemon was intended for later in the game because of it. It's kind of telling in that sense. But Primeape is kind of unique among fighting types because most fighting types, especially in the earlier games, are slow and bulkier. Good attack, good bulk, meaning like HP and defense, usually bad special, and then usually slow speed. Primeape, on the other hand, has really high speed for a fighting type, and of course has the high attack stat. And then all of his other stats are like, they're okay. You're definitely not going to want to use Primeape Special for anything. Even though you can get like the elemental punches on a Primeape if you trade from Generation 2 and have them already on. There's like moves that you learn in future generations, then you can trade them back. It's like a Generation 1 and 2 exclusive thing. It's really weird, but anyway, it's a thing you could look into if you want, but it's kind of pointless, again, because you're going to be using your special stat to do the elemental punches, which is not what you want to be using on a Primeape. So, anyhow, there's not a whole lot to complain about with Primeape in terms of its stats anyway. Like, they're perfectly fine for a fighting type. And they're on the higher-ish end for Pokemon in this game. Definitely, like, a little bit above average. Not quite at the 400 mark that I was talking about, where you really want Pokemon with a base stat total of 400 or more to be like, this is definitely the cream of the crop here. But all that aside, if you have access to a Mankey or a Primeape and you want to use a fighting type in your team, this is definitely going to be one of your better options. There's not any other Pokemon, any other fighting type, I should say, in this game that is as fast as a Primeape is. And so if you want a sweeper that's also fighting type, this is as good as you're going to get. And also, Primeape evolving at level 28 is not terrible. It's like, basically the benchmark for me is you evolve before the starters do. And if you do, you're pretty good. Like, you're not winning awards necessarily, but late 20s is like, it's very serviceable. You can make it work. It's average, if you will. Early 20s is like gold standard. End of your 30s, and it's like, okay. Okay, you're a starter now, and you're probably not as good as a starter, unfortunately, but thankfully, Primeape, late 20s, pretty okay. Especially for how powerful the Pokemon is. Now, the move pool for a Primeape is lackluster. We have a lot of fighting type moves. Well, actually, we don't have a lot of fighting type moves. There aren't a lot of fighting type moves in Generation 1. But we do have a lot of normal type moves. And, I mean, pretty much every Pokemon has a lot of normal type moves, so it's not saying much. and most of them are, what you'd expect. This is a strength user if you want to put strength on it. The big thing about Primeape, though, is that Primeape does get access to some coverage moves in the form of Dig and Rock Slide. And so you see both of those on my recommended moveset. Rock Slide is just a really solid rock type move, and so that'll cover Primeape's flying weakness. And then Dig is in Generation 1, 100 base power, and so it's a really solid ground type move. You still want Earthquake, but unfortunately Primeape doesn't learn Earthquake, so you're stuck with Dig. And Dig will cover Poison specifically, because otherwise you're going to be relying on like a normal type move to hit poison types. And so being able to hit them super effectively is going to be nice, and they also kind of get the extra electric coverage. And then our first move in my recommended moveset is Submission. Finding a fighting type move in Generation 1 is really hard, and Submission is basically the best one in the game. It's unfortunate because Submission is only 80% accurate for 80% for 80 base power, and it does a quarter recoil damage to you. It's certainly a move that you can use. I'm usually not a fan of recoil moves, and so putting it on here kind of hurts me a little bit, but your only other option for fighting type moves that do damage are Seismic Toss, which is a move that scales with your level. You do the same amount of HP's worth of damage equal to your Pokemon's current level. So if your Primeape is level 28, you'll be doing 28 damage with your Seismic Toss, and it's one of those fixed damage moves. And single player fixed damage moves like that, especially ones that scale for level, usually pretty bad, because at least with a move like Seismic Toss, you're not going to get high enough level to make it worth it. Though Seismic Toss does have the advantage of being able to hit ghost types, so something I guess worth considering. On the other hand, though, there's Low Kick. I'm not joking, that's literally the only other move. And that is base 50 power, 90% accurate. At the end of the day, it's kind of up to preference between Low Kick and Submission. I think because it's single player and you have access to items and you have access to a Pokemon Center, you can afford to take the recoil damage from Submission. It might be a little bit more annoying if you don't like using potions or any sort of healing items, but at the end of the day, I had to make a choice, and here we are. And then, of course, Body Slam. We've covered Body Slam before. Just a really nice move to round out the moveset. I intend for Body Slam, if you don't like healing with potions, to be your like main damaging move. And then Submission is your, I need to hit something really hard, something that's weak to fighting, but like resists normal, something like a rock type. Anyway, that does it for Primeape though. Just a really nice fighting type. I can recommend it if you want a fighting type, because your other options are very limited, and honestly, it's gonna be kind of hard to beat a Primeape. There's some sort of issue with pretty much every other fighting type in the game, and so, especially if you want something that resembles a sweeper, this is your best option. And regardless if you actually want to permanently use a Primeape on your team, putting a Mankey on your team temporarily for the first gym, if you're playing Pokemon Yellow, is maybe a good idea.
The Pig Monkey Pokemon. An agile Pokemon that lives in trees. It angers easily and will not hesitate to attack anything.
And here he is, folks. Nidoran male. Yeah, this is exactly the same as Nidoran female in most ways that are of any importance. Of course, stat distribution looks a little bit different. Again, to reiterate, Nidoran male is more offensive, whereas Nidoran female is more defensive. So the stat spread's going to be more offense oriented, putting more into attack and more into speed. And for as a player playthrough, it makes him a little bit better than her. And are just superior, get over it. Yeah, but interestingly, Nidoran male does have 2 less base stat total than Nidoran female. 233 versus 235. So I don't know what that's trying to say, but let's go ahead and look straight at Nidorino. Actually, you know what? I don't have anything to say about Nidorino. Let's go straight to Nidoking. The king. Honestly, I don't really have anything to say about Nidoking either. Just a really fantastic Pokemon for how early you get it. Again, above 400 club, like, really good. Really good mixed attacker if you want to use Nidoking special stat. And of course, the recommended moveset's exactly the same as Nidoqueen's. If you want to hear the rationale, go listen to Nidoqueen's bio again. I mean, otherwise, you know, just a really solid Pokemon to pick up if you need a ground type specifically, or you just need a really nice mixed attacker that is powerful, and this thing will carry you through the game pretty easily, honestly. So, great Pokemon.
The Poison Pin Pokemon. Its large ears are always kept upright. If it senses danger, it will attack with a poisonous sting. And with that, we are finally done catching all the Pokemon in this route. I'm going to go ahead and deposit all these Pokemon, and then we're going to heal. Okay. We've healed, we've deposited our Pokemon, but also, I went ahead and I bought some more Pokeballs because I was running out. And then I caught an extra Caterpie and an extra Pidgey. And this is because we actually have some version exclusive Pokemon already that we need to catch, and a different version that's not this version, and then trade over with this one. So I caught those Pokemon to trade, and at this point, we're going to go ahead and do the trade. If you want to see how exactly I caught or handled catching version exclusives, I'm going to have a companion piece linked in the description below that you can go check out. It's an unlisted video. But it's going to essentially just be me playing through Pokemon Red to catch the version exclusives that we need up to this point. And then every time that we need version exclusives or need something to do with a different game, I'll bring it back up, and then you can go and watch that and then come back here. So go ahead and do that first if you care. If not, we're going to go ahead and do the trade. Okay, so here we are in Pokemon Yellow and in Red. We have Pokemon Yellow on the left and Pokemon Red on the right. They look a little bit different, but that's just how it is. What we need to do to trade, though, is talk to this lady over here in the corner. Welcome to the Cable Club. Please apply here. Before opening the link, we have to save the game. Yeah, sure. Where would you like to go? Let's go to the Trade Center. Okay, please wait just a moment. And then she brings us in. Now, cool, exclamation point? It's pretty interesting. You can do pretty much anything you want in here that you would normally be able to do in a game. There isn't anything important in here, though. It's just a trade room. And what we want to do to trade is line up with these, like, Game Boy-esque looking things, and then activate them. And then I'll open the trade window. Now, to trade, we're going to do our Caterpie that we caught extra in Red. Let Let me look at stats real quick, actually. You know what? Just because this will be interesting, we're gonna do the stats for our Pikachu here, and then do the stats for the Pikachu over here. Now look at the difference between the sprites. And even the coloring to some extent. It's pretty interesting, right? Yeah, anyway. So, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to be trading Caterpie trade for this Weedle here. Of course, it does not matter actually what we trade for the Weedle, it just matters that we trade something. Caterpie and Weedle will be traded. Alright, let's confirm. And now that has completed, we're also going to trade this Pidgey that we caught extra in yellow for the extra Pikachu in red. And with that, we've traded everything that we want to trade. So we're going to come down here and cancel that. And we'll come down here and cancel this. And now, to be able to actually get out of the trading center, we will actually have to go into the pause menu and use this reset option that they add in on each of your devices to make sure they're reset properly. And with that, our trade has been completed. We now have the Weedle that we needed. The bug poison Pokemon. Ew. Let's go ahead and look at the Pokedex entry for it.
That's right. We have to talk about Weedle. I know that we can't get it at Pokemon Yellow without trading, obviously. But I don't know what your situation is. I don't know if you're playing red or blue instead of yellow. And I don't know if you have access to trading or not. So, for the sake of being a scholar and evaluating every Pokemon there is, and giving you the information you may or may not need, we're going to talk about it. Weedle is a bug poison type, and you might be looking at it going, this looks very familiar. And that's because Weedle is basically just Caterpie, but also a poison type. They have the same evolutionary path. They evolve at the same levels. They have the same sort of base form to defensive form to final form. And basically everything about them is the same except for their typing and their stat spread. And to some extent their other metadata, but You know, when you're evaluating a Pokemon as casual, basically the only important things you notice are that it's poison type instead of pure bug. So, in contrast to Caterpie, Weedle's kind of interesting. This is part of the reason I have been enjoying doing this whole talking about every Pokemon thing, is because I get to see Pokemon in a new light compared to my like preconceived notions of them. And this is for a few reasons. So the deal with Weedle is it's very much, again, the same as Caterpie. You only get 2 moves. You get String Shot, and instead of Tackle, you get Poison Sting. Poison Sting, again, not a good move, but I guess makes it somewhat different with the chance to poison things and getting Stab at least instead of just Tackle. And then Kakuna is, again, the same as Metapod pretty much. All of the stats shift to be more defensive, and then you learn Harden as well, and that's literally it. But then we get to Beedrill. Beedrill is a unique Pokemon and actually has something of a niche. Something I never thought I'd say about Beedrill, but here we are. First of all, Beedrill's stat spread is actually like pretty solid considering what kind of Pokemon it is. Its stat spread supports it being a physical sweeper with its high speed and high attack relative to all of its other stats. Unfortunately, Beedrill's base stat total is aggressively mid, like very low for a fully evolved Pokemon, but again, early game, it's pretty okay. It's pretty solid. And the fact that Beedrill is a bug poison type is not great for it, honestly. Being part poison type in a game where a psychic type is so good is really bad for you, especially because bug is supposed to be a counter to psychic type. Bug is super effective on psychic, and so if your Pokemon is like the Pokemon that you're counting on to fight your psychic type is itself weak to psychic, not great. So honestly, Beedrill would probably just be a better Pokemon overall if it were pure bug type, but we don't live in that world, so we're stuck with it being part poison type. Other than the fact that, you know, the whole situation with psychic types, the poison typing is, I guess, fine. Beedrill doesn't really get to take advantage of its poison type all that much in terms of attacking and stuff like that, but it is what it is. Let's take a look at Beedrill's recommended moveset, though, that I have here. You remember when we talked about Butterfree? And I said that Butterfree doesn't learn any bug-type attacking moves. Beedrill does learn bug-type attacking moves, which is a new and novel concept. But the thing about bug-type attacking moves is that there's only 3 of them in the entire game. One of them is Leech Life, and Leech Life is base 20 power, and it can like heal you and stuff. It's not really worth talking about. And then we have the one that's on Beedrill here, Twin Needle. Twin Needle is definitely the best bug-type move in the game. It is guaranteed to hit twice, and it's 100% accurate. So it's like base power 25, but it always hits twice, so it's actually effectively base power 50. And on the second hit, it will have a 20% chance to poison whatever you're hitting. It's actually a pretty cool move, all things considered, being the strongest bug type move in the game and also having a chance to poison. I mean, what's not to like, right? I know base power 50 effectively is like very underwhelming, but that's what we have. That's what we're stuck with. There is that third move I mentioned, though, which is Pin Missile. Beedrill does learn Pin Missile, and Pin Missile can do more damage than Twin Needle, but there's a big caveat here. The deal with Pin Missile is that it's base power 14, but it's one of those moves that hits 2 to 5 times. So Pin Missile is 85% accurate. That means that you have to do the accuracy check and pass the accuracy check to be able to hit the move at all, period. If you do hit the move, then it goes, okay, how many times is the move going to hit? You have a 3/8 chance each to hit 2 or 3 times, and then you have a 1/8 chance each to hit 4 or 5 times. The only way that Pin Missile does more damage than Twin Needle is if Pin Missile hits 4 or 5 times. So if you take the fact that only 25% of the time that you hit the move, you're going to be doing more damage than Twin Needle, you multiply that 25% by the 85%, your effective accuracy for being like a better move is like 21% or something. It's like something slightly below 25%. I don't know about you, but a move that is even like 75% accurate, I'm like, hell no. A move that's like 20% accurate, 21% accurate, like, what are you doing? Pin Missile's like alright, obviously, if you don't have anything else that can fill the slot, because I mean, even if you're only doing 2 or 3 hits, at least that's something, and it's going to be better than Leech Life in terms of raw base power. But I mean, Twin Needle is just so much better than it. The other thing about Pin Missile is that you might be like, okay, well, I guess, you know, if Twin Needle is better on Beedrill, well, what if something else doesn't learn Twin Needle but does learn Pin Missile? The only other Pokemon that learns Pin Missile besides Beedrill is Jolteon. Yeah, I don't get it either. So then we look at Twin Needle again, and Twin Needle is actually a signature move of Beedrill, so only Beedrill can learn it. And that puts Beedrill in a very unique situation. The only other Pokemon that can learn a good damaging bug-type move is Jolteon, of all things, which you're never going to want to put Pin Missile on because it's a physical attacking type. And so you're left with Beedrill to be your main bug damage dealer. Bug is super effective on Psychic, Grass, and in this generation, it's also effective against Poison. This puts Beedrill in a unique situation where it's basically the best damage, super effective damage you're going to be able to do on Psychic types, which again, not very useful because it itself is weak to Psychic types, but I mean, if you can outspeed, then you can get a good hit in and you might be able to sweep them. Yeah, I'm really reaching here on that one, but the thing that's actually kind of cool about Beedrill is that because Bug is super effective on Poison and Grass, and so many of the Grass types in this game are part Poison, they're Grass Poison, all of those Grass Poison types are going to be quad weak to Twin Needle, and only Twin Needle, because Grass and Poison only share a weakness with Bug. That makes Beedrill a really good candidate for the 4th gym, which is a Grass type gym that has a lot of Grass Poison types in it. And also just like a cleanup hitter against Grass types in general, even if they're not power Poison types. So it's a really interesting niche that Beedrill's carved out for itself by having the only good bug type move in the game, and having the stat spread to kind of support it, and the typing to support it for that matter. Okay, the other moves, Hyper Beam, I mean, good attacking move that takes advantage of the attack stat. There is basically nothing else to put on Beedrill, I'll be honest. Swords Dance to boost your attack by 2 stages to help you sweep things. Same thing with Agility, boosting your speed by 2 stages to help you sweep things. That's pretty much all I got for Beedrill here. It's a cool Pokemon, actually, like, now that I've evaluated it, and it kind of sucks that it's not in Pokemon Yellow, because I might have considered using it. I probably wouldn't have, but I might have considered it if it were in Yellow, as well as Red and Blue, but Elastic does not. However, this is one of those Pokemon that I think does have a niche use to put you into the very, very late game in. And I think that maybe 1 or 2 of those TMs are renewable, so it's not like the worst Pokemon in the world in terms of TM usage. Not entirely sure on that part though. Either way, neat Pokemon. I can only recommend it if you really want to use something unique that can still have a niche use. Like, it's not an entire waste of a party slot, traditionally speaking anyway. Or again, if you want to use something in the early game that's going to be relatively powerful, and then you're going to replace it later. Obviously always an option. So overall, if you were hearing what I was saying and going, mate, that sounds exactly what I need, take a second look at Beedrill, I guess, if you have access to it, that is.
The hairy bug Pokemon. Beware of the sharp stinger on its head. It hides in grass and bushes where it eats leaves. Weird and creepy, but also kind of cool. Anyhow, you know, with that all said and done, now we've completed our first couple of trades, and we have, you know, the imposter Pikachu here that doesn't, however, give you the Pikachu cry, gives you like the normal basic cry that you get for Pikachu. That's how you know it's not your Pikachu, besides nicknaming and just keeping track. But anyway, now we've done all that, we're going to end our first episode back here. So, if you like the video, please hit like. If you really like the video and you want to see more, consider subscribing. And if you dislike the video, then hit dislike. Otherwise, I'll see everyone in the next episode.